In your research of this book, what did you learn about Trump almost dying a couple millimeters away that you want our audience to know? What was the most shocking piece of information that you learned? And did the shooter act alone?
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say, Charlie. So, look, I don't trust the federal government. I think that's something that probably all of us in the MAGA and MAHA and just libertarian and whatever you want to call it sphere all share, is that we don't trust the feds or the crypto guys, et cetera. And the idea being here that we should just trust the FBI and the CIA and the Secret Service, and they're going to put out all the information that we want, especially when the House is coming out saying that the female lead agent on this only had 4 years on the job at the Secret Service, 4 years out of FLETC, which is their academy down in Brunswick, Georgia, or the fact that the guy who was operating the drone only had done one online course in drone work before this and spent most of the day on customer service and customer support now. So we don't trust them, and we hired our own private investigators who are licensed in the state of Pennsylvania. They're operating, and by the way, continue to operate in Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, and Butler, Pennsylvania, and thereabouts, because we want to find out through the shoe leather reporting, knocking on doors, going to the gun range, going to various places associated with Thomas Matthew Crooks, and being a little cagey about that, but it all will be explained in due time, to find out really what was going on. And look, knocking on the doors of his neighbors and finding out that there were cars and vehicles going to visit that home in the days and weeks leading up to the shooting, doing device analysis. We actually did device analysis that goes beyond what Heritage Action put out or Heritage Oversight put out.
Yeah, Jack, so you're getting at something that is kind of one of those long-running rumors online that you're not going to hear about from official sources. You're talking about he had devices that were encrypted, had overseas connections. I don't know much about it because, a lot of the details that I've seen have not been reliably sourced. What can you tell us? I mean, I don't want to give away the book. People should all go buy it. But, I mean, give us a little granularity on this, because it's super fascinating. I think we're all curious.
Yeah, so two things. First of all, yes, regarding the foreign encrypted email accounts, it does look like he used those to procure some of the weapons, or at least the ammo that he used, maybe not the gun itself, which he bought from his father, which, by the way, we broke the story in the course of researching this, that Eric Olshan, the U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Pennsylvania, has opened a grand jury investigation into this, and more than likely is looking at the father. You can see that based on the defense firm that he's hired. And we've also been able to see, just through our own reporting, that it does look like he was in communication with some devices that I will just say they have the profile of burner phones, phones that were active for periods of time, then go dormant for long periods of time, come active again late at night in locations that are quite remote, not like, a work or a home, but, these remote locations, they become active, then go dormant again, both leading up to, on the day before, on the day of the shooting, and then after the shooting, even these burner-like devices stay active. So that's something that we're following up on. And again, the information about the grand jury investigation, which I guess Politico and the Washington Post and the New York Times just really weren't interested in. But, Joshua Lisec and I found that out just doing basic document requests in the area. And one of the document requests that we did came back and said, hey, we can't give you from the Allegheny Community College said we can't do that because those are subject to a grand jury subpoena. And we're like, what grand jury subpoena are you talking about there, guys? And so we, pulled on that thread and we're able to figure that out. So, and again, as a public university, they have to put that information out unless there's an investigation.
Jack, I have a question for you. If you were to psychologically profile the two assassination attempts, the would-be assassins, do you see commonalities between the two? Are they completely distinct and different, or are you seeing through lines that connect them?
Some perhaps. I actually had a conversation with Noah Formica of Turning Point Action, who, as it turns out, interacted with Thomas Matthew Crooks. You can see him in that sort of TikTok video where Crooks was walking around the vendor area, and Turning Point had the sign-up sheet, and Noah just doing his job is saying, hey, are you registered to vote? Would you like to register? You registered your current address, absentee ballot, all that, like we were talking about earlier. And he said Crooks was very arrogant to him and sort of stuck his nose up in the air, wouldn't respond, but he said he almost scoffed. Said he almost scoffed with like an arrogance of some sort, as if he had some sort of secret knowledge about something that was about to happen, as if almost, looking back through it in hindsight, almost if he knew that he would be able to get up on the building. And by the way, he was not walking around with his backpack, so we still don't know to this point where exactly the gun was when he was walking around. I'm sure that Noah Formica and probably everybody would have stopped him if they saw him with a gun walking around. And then to compare that, but by the way, something that people don't understand about Crooks as well, extremely high intelligence. This is a guy who was involved with robotics, was involved with programming, and had scored a 1,500 on his SATs. But he only had an associate's degree, and he was working at a nursing home as a dietary aide. So question, why do that? Then Ryan Wesley Ruth, Ruth was more prone, I would say, to flights of fancy. He had a lot, main character syndrome, I guess is what you would call it psychologically. He believes he's this dashing figure who's going off to Ukraine to fight evil and save the world. He wrote a manifesto of sorts and uploaded the entire thing to Amazon, which we have, where he's talking about trying to get foreign fighters from Afghanistan and bring them to Ukraine, and going on and on and on about how Donald Trump needs to support Ukraine more and how this is the fight for freedom and the fight for heroes. So I would say there's a contrast, because while one has these delusions of grandeur, but perhaps where the similarity lies is one has delusions of grandeur and that they think that they are the main character of these great epochs of history, and that by perhaps taking out Donald Trump, and again he even wrote this dead man's letter that he gave to his neighbor, talking about a bounty on Trump, that Trump needs to be taken out, and the DOJ of course puts that out without any redactions. Thanks so much, DOJ, really appreciate that. Talk about intent. And then second, whereas with Crooks, again, that arrogance, that belief that perhaps he was superior, that belief that I'm going to take this guy out. Remember, Crooks is an Act Blue donor to do so in order to achieve notoriety. And, people have tried to put him more in a school shooter type of vein where, he'd been looking up Ethan Crumbley and some of the other school shooters. And so, it does seem, though, that both did so looking for fame, looking for celebrity, looking for doing something where they'd be able to make their mark on the world stage. And both of them viewed taking out Donald Trump as the best way that they would be celebrated by the media, celebrated by history. And I think that it really is an indictment of our times, to thinking that killing a man, a father, and a grandfather, and of course, by the way, Cory Compatore was also killed in all of this, was murdered, and his family deserves answers on this. That psychologically, we live in a society where half of the country kind of thought it would be good. And I think there's some polling that 32% of the country wished that the assassin's bullet on July 13th had found purchase.
Joshua, let me ask you, in your research of this, we only have about 2.5 minutes remaining. Do you believe that the United States Secret Service was at any point compromised?
This is an interesting question because it's one that has been largely ignored in both the mainstream and alternative spaces, where we see the phrase security failures, multiple security failures, unprecedented security failures. We believe that that's going in the wrong direction. And in fact, what if these security failures were in fact tactical successes? So when we went to Butler, Jack's been there a couple of times now, and we scoped this whole place out, what we noticed is how deep in the pocket of presidential security Thomas Matthew Crooks was. We noticed his behavior on video and in images and from multiple bystanders and eyewitnesses. He's acting calm, cool, collected, confident, and as Jack pointed out, cocky. This is not somebody who's acting like he needs to hide or is concerned about getting caught. And with all the security failures that just so happened to all happen on that same day, we did a little social experiment. We ran the probability, and we found that there is a 1 in 1 septillion chance that Thomas Matthew Crooks was 140 yards away with a firearm at the same time on the same day that all these other security failures are all happening all at once. The odds of that happening all by chance probability is 1 in 1 septillion, which is the equivalent of flipping a coin and it lands on heads 93 times in a row. That's the probability.